What's going on, everybody? We're gearing up to have Alabama defensive coordinator Kane Wommack join us in about 1 minute. So the ads are going, but as soon as he's up, I'm gonna run the stream for the radio show, and we'll get things going. Appreciate everybody in here. If you're new, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like the video. That always helps us out. If you got any questions, maybe we can get them in. Go ahead and drop those down below. Maybe we can ask Coach Wommack those questions. But again, appreciate you guys being here, and hope you enjoy the interview.
Guarantee.
Text support to 511-511. Morning Kick. These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent.
Tuscaloosa weather.
Warm and breezy, thunderstorms likely late this afternoon and tonight. The storms could be strong to severe. The main threat coming from strong straight-line winds. The high today 84, tonight's low 50. Tomorrow cooler with gradual clearing, the high at 64. I'm James Spann on the ABC 3340 Weather Center on Tide 100.9. It's 78 degrees in Tuscaloosa.
This is Miller's Edge on Tide 100.9.
And welcome back into this Tuesday edition of the Miller's Edge, right here, Tide 100.9, 1230 WTBC. Again, presented by the Good Feet Store, where we are now joined by new Alabama defensive coordinator Kane Wommack. Coach, thanks for giving us a few minutes of your time. How are you this afternoon?
Hey, doing great. Glad to be on with you guys.
Absolutely, man. I know you're crunched for time, so I just want to jump into this. Coach, I'm Christian Miller. I played here from 14 to 18, and spend a lot of time here. And I do the sideline reporting now, so I'm always around the building, and I've enjoyed seeing kind of what you guys have been able to bring. This new energy that you guys have. But I want to ask you about your defense. I spent 5 years in Coach Saban's system, so I'm familiar with the cover seven, the pattern match, and all those principles. And I've watched a lot of your tape and got to break down some of y'all's film. And I tell people there's a lot more similarities than you might realize with your defense. People talk about the 4-2-5, but realistically, we've been running a lot of that. Probably 90% of the time over the last few years. So personnel-wise, there are a lot of similarities. Now the difference is, I at least notice, it looks like you like to run a lot more cover three, a lot more true zone versus pattern matching. For the listeners, do you mind kind of breaking that down and kind of what they can expect when they see y'all take the field this fall?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you got a really good pulse for it. I'd be curious to kind of hear your opinions as you watch more of what we're doing. But Coach Saban and I have kind of been talking about that quite a bit. We really have evolved probably more into the 3-4 nickel package out of the 4-2-5. And Coach Saban, right, has really kind of morphed into what we're doing, the 4-2-5 defense, right? So, and doing it out of more of a 3-4 nickel where you have the flex and the ability to do what you did, right? I guess in y'all's terms, right, you would have been the jack. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
And then for us, we call it the wolf. But really, when I watch it on tape over the last couple of years, we're doing very, very similar things. So, it wasn't a position in the 4-2-5 defense that, occasionally we used to drop the guy out in coverage every now and then. And then all of a sudden you realized how much more versatile you could be with the simulated pressures where you can activate an inside backer in pass rush and drop the outside backer, and then play 3-4 defense and not have to change personnel if you've got a nickel or what you would call a star, right? We call it the husky to kind of hold up in terms of the front. Out of 3-4 personnel. So really, I think we've kind of both evolved more towards each other. I agree with you. That's probably the major difference is you're going to see a lot, Coach Saban, they ran a lot more of the cover 7 bracket, all those types of things. Yeah. We still play match style coverages, but we do it primarily out of a one high look. Sure. But when we get to our cover 3 stuff, you're going to see a lot more vision-oriented coverage than what we've been in the past. What that has allowed us to do, we used to run more of the Ripley's match type coverage, that Coach ran for a number of years, and obviously we have a lot of principles that are still built into it. But my dad was a longtime defensive coordinator in the SEC, and in 2014, he had the number 1 defense in the country at Ole Miss. And that was the year that we kind of made the transition to play with vision coverage in our, and essentially all that means, right, for listeners is that we are putting our eyes on the quarterback, and we are reacting off of his vision and breaking on the ball. And what it allowed us to do is to create more takeaways, more pass breakups. We were number one in the country in interceptions that year. My last year at Indiana, last time I've been a defense coordinator, we were number one in the country in interceptions. We feel like we're creating a lot more plays on the ball when you can mix in that vision coverage to some of the match coverages that we already have built in our defense.
No, it makes perfect sense. It looks like a fun defense to play in. I mean, I love that you guys have a lot of moving pieces, and I definitely feel like with me being kind of that hybrid outside linebacker, like the jack in our system, I definitely probably would have benefited playing in this system. But my dad's on here as well.
I would have loved having you for 4 years. I can tell you. I remember when you were playing, and you would have been great in our system. You were great in your system. So
well, I appreciate that, Coach.
Yeah. For sure.
Well, Coach, you probably remember Christian, but I'm the dad, so I'm Corey. You won't remember me. You probably was in high school and dating pretty women and that type of thing back when I was playing. But I played at the University of South Carolina and played a decade in the National Football League. A lot of those with the New York Giants. Played on the opposite side, Lawrence Taylor, Michael Strahan, those guys. So I was in those defenses. So I'm old school, and I understand 4-2-5 just nickel. And for us, we never really ran a lot of that, right? But when I played in the decade of the 90s, everybody was, 12 personnel, 13, 21. It was what we call regular defense. But to play this scheme, I do understand one thing, and I've talked about this a great deal, is the fact that you got to have 4 dudes, right? You got to, anytime we played a 3-4, but we switched some to 4-3. But we had to have 4 dudes up front, one that could rush the quarterback so we could drop 7, play zone behind it, and also sometimes even 2 gap, having to really dictate and impose their will on the offensive line. Talk about these guys that you inherited up front. We know that you lost, really good rushers and that are headed to the NFL, Braswell and Dallas Turner. Talk about what you have coming back and those dudes that you look forward to coaching this fall.
Well, I do think when you think about playing in a 4-down system that obviously can move in and out of a 3-4, that field defensive end has to be a pretty special skill set, right? Because we call it the bandit. That guy sometimes has to play a 9 technique, sometimes a 5, and sometimes he's playing a 4-eye, right, when you reduce down to an odd front. And so it takes a pretty versatile skill set to do that. But on top of it, I think what I have seen from our guys is, sometimes we have some guys that can create a lot of havoc in the backfield up in the middle. And when you're playing odd defense, sometimes it's a little bit harder to create some of that havoc and let those guys kind of cut loose and create some pass rush from up the middle in the inside positions, including the field defensive end in a 4-eye as well. And so what we've seen, when you can reduce down or really flex out to be a 4-down look, you're forcing some more one-on-one matchups in terms of pass rush. And we don't. People think 4-down is traditional. I have the A gap, you have the B gap. But in reality, the way we're structured to fit the run, we let those defensive linemen really kind of create a lot of knockback and generate a lot of pass rush. And if they end up falling into the A gap, if you're a 3 technique, the backer can make them right very quickly. And so what I've seen from these guys is that they're generating a lot of pass rush out of our 4-down looks right now. And those are some of the things that we're kind of seeing. How do we continue to expand our 4-down package? What are the things we want to do out of odd defense? What are the things we want to do out of some of our auxiliary fronts? And so right now I really like what we're doing out of the 4-down structure with some of these guys, because I think, we're able to create some havoc in the backfield right now.
We're joined by Alabama defensive coordinator Kane Wommack. Coach Wommack, you've got a lot of talent in that secondary, but with that, comes a lot of inexperience because there's a lot of youth.
Yeah.
How critical is that going to be to get those guys up to speed and prepared to make an immediate impact, given they're young players, but they are talented?
Yeah, they are very talented for sure. But experience is finite, right? And, there's only 11 bodies that can go out on the field from one year to the next. And those amount of reps, when you lose those reps, right, there is a cost to those things. And so what I am excited about with this young group of guys is they are extremely talented. Some of them are probably further along in terms of their technique, fundamentals, consistency in those fundamentals and disciplines than your traditional, freshman coming out of high school. I think the fact that, you think about like Christian, when you came in 2014, like nobody was really a mid-year enrollee coming out of high school. Maybe, once in a blue moon.
Right.
Now, we got 22 guys on our roster that are already here that should still be going to prom right now, and so it allows those guys, right, to be able to develop at a much higher rate going into their freshman season than what we've seen before. And I think honestly, some of these, people feel different ways about 7-on-7 tournaments. But for defensive backs, right, those are a ton of reps that it's like an AAU basketball team, right? These guys play football year round in terms of the details of coverage of their position. So we're seeing these freshmen that are coming along at a lot further, than where they were in the past. And then you match that with the fact that our offense, we are very multiple on offense. We're very aggressive in our install. We see a lot of pictures, a lot of formations, a lot of shifts, motions, and then different variations in the passing game off of that. So the exciting thing is that I'm hopeful that as we go into the season, there will be very few things that these guys haven't seen and had experience with. And obviously, if they're one of the guys on the field, they've shown that they can make those adjustments in real time. And so I'm excited about where some of those freshmen are right now.
Coach, when Christian was getting recruited and we come here and I would go in Coach Saban's office a lot, and one thing that we had in common is we love ball. We talked a lot of football, and he'll take his garage door opener and close the door. I'm sure Coach supports in the office. I don't know if he has a garage door opener like your coach did, but we're getting there. We're talking about Belichick and those old New York Giant defenses. But I would get so mad at him, and I'm old school, so I kind of say what's on my heart. Watching those games a lot of times because there was so much confusion. I'm sure you've seen it by watching the tape. Secondary guys and linebackers seem was on different pages, and you go back to Tennessee 2 years ago. You go back to LSU, games they lost at the end of the game, and a lot of that came from like bunch formation, where they line up in bunch or motion to bunch, and they seem to have trouble. Covering guys out of that bunch. I'm asking you directly, what are your bunch principles? Because one thing I love about what you were doing and playing zone defense, I'm like, it was simple for us. The widest take the widest, the number 2 guy, you take the inside guy, and if you're inside, you just let the guys come to you, and you didn't really have to move much. But for Coach Saban, it was the pattern matching and things were different. But what principles are you telling your guys when it comes to like bunches? Because we see a lot of that now in today's college football game.
You do. I mean, you're going to see a lot of those things. You're going to see stacks. You're going to see motions. You're going to see the teams that are trying to do essentially what, Sean McVay from the Rams and all those, they get in condensed formations and they motion and shift in and out of stacks and bunches. And so you got to have good, simple rules for those things. I will say we have evolved quite a bit, when you think about, my dad had a 38-year career as an SEC defensive coordinator. As a matter of fact, he coached at South Carolina with Steve Spurrier. I was going to mention that to you. So we've spent a little bit of time in Columbia as well.
Oh, wow.
But
you know what? I'm thinking about. I know your father because I used to do the TV games for the game.
Dave Wommack is my dad. And he's retired now, living in Oxford, Mississippi, where he retired from. But anyway, when you think about the early years of our defense, we had so many checks and adjustments because people would line up in a bunch and they would come out of a huddle, and you had plenty of time to communicate those things, right? And you could get on the same page with it. Now they're motioning, shifting to them, going fast, getting in bunches. And so we have evolved over the years to simplify our bunch adjustments, especially when you play vision-oriented coverage. It's a little bit easier to deal with those things than it was in a pattern match style. Mm-hmm. And that's, where we've evolved from, right? We had done those things in the past, but we've evolved. We still have complexities in our system. I think, if you said, how do we line up to bunches? There are different ways that we can do those things, depending on what coverage concept we have in and what the situation is, right? And how you apply that concept to the situation. But at the end of the day, you've got to be able to play simple enough so that you just don't have simple busts. And that's really the main focus for us is I would hope when you watch our defense, occasionally, right, a guy's going to get beat man to man in a play, or a guy's going to get out leveraged in a cover 2 situation or something like that. But we're not going to, hopefully have just massive coverage busts. We've done a really good job over the years of adjusting to the new age style of college football so that we can line up and get our cleats in the ground and then show those nuances, through some of the coverage things that allow us to still play fast. And so I think that we have adapted as well as anybody in the country in terms of staying relevant with what college offenses are doing today.
Well, I think fans are going to love hearing that, because as great as our defenses have been, in the past with Coach Saban here, I think that was probably one of the biggest complaints. It's kind of like my dad was mentioning. We tended to have some of those MEs or some busts at times. But Coach, I know you're short on time, so I got one last question for you before I let you go, and that's about the linebackers, because I know you're also working with the linebackers, and I'm sure you're familiar with the standard here at Alabama. They call it LBU for a reason. We've had some great guys come through the building. When you're coaching your linebacker unit, what's that mindset and those fundamentals that you're trying to instill in your guys to get them to play to that standard? And really, how excited are you to work with two guys, and Deontay Lawson and I'm forgetting his name. I'm drawing a blank right now.
Jahad Campbell.
Jahad Campbell. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Yep.
How excited are you to work with those guys this upcoming season?
Well, I would argue, over the years of guys like you and then some of the defensive backs, you could argue that we're DBU and we're outside linebacker U, and
that's true.
Might be linebacker U too. So, and there's been one or two D linemen that have been pretty good here. So,
no doubt.
I think certainly you recognize the standard of what great linebacker play has been here in this program. And so, we have gone round and round about the evaluation of guys going in the 25 class. I mean, the guys that are the top on my board, I've watched them probably 12 to 15 times already a piece. I mean, I just constantly am evaluating, watching film, pulling them up again. I would say I do it probably every 2 to 3 days, where I'll pull a group of 4 guys and I'll watch them again, for the 12th or 13th time, just to get an evaluation. Because here, obviously this is a great program, and that A on your chest, right, means something to people nationally. There's a national brand to recruiting here at Alabama, and so young men are going to want to come here. You just got to make sure that you're evaluating the right ones, and that's the one thing in meeting with Coach Saban and spending time with him. Like, he has been so consistent in his messaging to me about be thorough in your evaluation process. When you take all those things and you specifically the linebacker position, there's a certain size to speed ratio that you have to have. But now, the days of I joke with Freddie all the time, the days of the Freddie Roach, 255, 60 pound inside backer making space tackles, right? Those guys, they have a hard time in today's game.
Yeah.
Because offenses are now forcing you to make space tackles, and that doesn't mean that you have to compromise on length. But it may mean that you have to compromise a little bit in terms of just overall weight and size. And so for us, guys like Jahad Campbell and Deontay, I think, are that next evolution of great linebackers that have been in this program, because they can make plays in space. They can show they've got great coverage awareness. They've got great spatial awareness, and they have change of direction to be able to make some of those space tackles, as well as hold up in the box and do the things that they need to do so that we can be a physically dominant run defense. And so, those are the things that pop off to me when I'm evaluating some of these young linebackers in terms of what we need, to stay relevant in the game.
Yeah, I mean, you answered. I had a bunch of other stuff I want to ask. I know we're short on time, but that was one of the things. Is the guys you've been recruiting, and I noticed there are a lot of athletes, and it sounds like that's kind of what you're looking for. Dad, you have one last thing for let them?
Yeah, one last question. I just want to ask you. I know that the swarm is a big thing, and I know Alabama's probably got T-shirts and hoodies ready with the swarm on them, pictures of the guys. One thing I know about defense, man, is attitude, right? It's having the will to win the line of scrimmage, change the line of scrimmage, run to the football, hit hit everything that you see. That's where I always taught it when I coached, and that seemed like what you're doing. But just talk about that swarm mentality, because today sometimes we got guys that take plays off. You see them jogging, but man, when you're attacking and when you're running to the football, that's what the coach always tell you. Good things happen, and I love that whole mindset of swarm, because when you're swarming, you're going to make big plays and create turnovers.
Well, I agree, and the swarm defense is really, it evolved from, we used to have a meeting on Friday nights where we would pull up a cut up of the opponent, and we would visualize and call out the plays that we were going to make in Saturday's game. And so we called that meeting the Ready Break Swarm. And we've kind of evolved from that mentality and that meeting right to the Swarm D. And that's really, we always talk about this. The responsibility of stopping the offense, whether run or pass, is placed on all 11 members of the defense, right? And so that mentality that, we are all going to swarm to the ball, because tremendous effort creates takeaways, and we don't ever use the word turnovers on defense. We always, for us, our defense, we say takeaways, because, turnover implies they gave you the ball. Takeaway implies you took the ball from them, right? And so that mentality of always trying to create that swarm mentality has been a huge piece of what we're doing. Now, we talk about all the time. My dad used to say this all the time: play each snap like it's the most important play of the game, because you have no idea whether it actually is going to be or not. And, all of us that have played this game or been around this game long enough to know, there's always, you can identify 8 to 10 plays that ultimately change the outcome of the game. And if we could give you those 8 to 10 plays, then we would put all our energy, effort into those, and maybe not necessarily the other 65. But, because you have no idea, you have to play each one like it's the most important snap. And so playing with that swarm mentality, creates good things. You're going to get hats to the ball. You're going to limit the yards after contact. You're going to limit the explosive plays and none for touchdowns. And then, you're going to create takeaways as well. And so those are the things that we're going to do with a swarm mentality. I do think, some of the misnomers that I want our fans to understand, we are not going to get smaller and faster. We are going to continue to recruit length here. We're going to continue to recruit size. Coach Saban, I think, said it best that, as you get into the third and fourth quarter of games, those little guys may get a little slower, but the big guys stay big. You know what I mean? They're not going to, we're going to continue to have length. We're going to continue to play with long athletic frames and play what Alabama has been defensively here for years. We just are recognizing, some of the skill sets that you have to stay relevant with college football. And some of that means space tacklers. Some of that means simplifying some of the checks and adjustments that, that these teams that are going fast don't allow you to do like we used to in the past. And then ultimately it always comes down to taking the ball away. And our defense structurally and schematically is built to do those things.
That sounds great, and I love it. I was about to say, I know all the fans listening; they've been real curious. Because we like to talk ball on our show, so it's been great having you on here and let you speak about your defense. From you and in your perspective. So, Coach, we appreciate you. Sorry you held you over a little bit, but just know you're welcome back on the Miller's Edge any time you'd like, and we'd love to talk ball with you, man. Just any time, you're more than welcome to come on.
Yeah, well. This has been great, man. I enjoy talking ball and going through it, especially with a great alum and someone also and Dad who's been playing this game and been around it for a long time. So look forward to talking to you guys again soon.
Yes, sir, no doubt. Well, Coach,
we love it, Coach, man. We wish you well, man. Wish you well, and looking forward to meeting you in person.
Thanks, I appreciate it, guys. Roll Tide.
Yes, sir. Roll Tide. Coach Kane Wommack, Alabama defensive coordinator, man. Good stuff, man. I know there's probably a couple questions.
Love talking football.
Oh, no, I could do that all day. I feel bad. There's a couple questions that I wanted to try to squeeze in there, but we already kind of held them over, and I felt bad about that. But
no, he gives great answers, and
he does,
some
absolutely.
coaches will be short, but he definitely loves talking ball, and I love that about Kane Wommack. And I think when you talk about those things, swarm, the mentality. We don't call turnover, we take away. We taking it, For the kingdom of heaven suffered violence, but the violent will take things by force. That's basically what he was saying. Good stuff there. All right, really Coach. that will be available to listen to again and again for you on our social media platforms. We'll hit a quick time out. We'll come back. The sermon has been preached. What do you think? What do you feel? We welcome your calls, 205-342-9904. Or you can send them via Tide 100.9. It's a free download for you on all your smart devices. You can ask your question there, and you can actually talk to it and leave a voicemail. My man Noah will play that for you, the best reader in all of the state of Alabama. Quick time out. We'll come back to you right here on the Tide 100.9, 1230 AM WTBC, the home of Alabama Crimson Tide Sports. We'll be back in a moment.